Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and as you could probably have figured out by now from the title, I was indeed given the incredible opportunity to interview Yannick, who is of course the creative director of The Division 2. I am recording this after the interview itself because I just wanted to preface things a little bit. As I said, this was an incredible opportunity for me, and I thank Yannick immensely for agreeing to do it. This was in the works for quite a while and is easily one of the hardest secrets I've ever had to keep, but here we are. In here we talk about a wide range of things, including Year 4 overall, season stuff, some PvP bits, all of that. I tried to ask a range of questions that both I was personally invested in, as well as stuff I know the community would want to ask themselves and be interested in listening to. Now I know I obviously could not cover absolutely everything. I only had 1 hour of time, and so I certainly hope you find all of the topics we did discuss interesting, and I apologize if there was any more stuff in there that you may have wanted to see. That said, I am beyond pleased with the result. I think we had a fantastic conversation that not only, give some super interesting bits of information in here that provide a better look at the content for TU15 specifically, but there are also some very intriguing teases that Yannick offers for the future of Year 4 as well. I think that's about all I wanted to cover here. So again, thank you so much to Yannick for taking the time to do this. Everybody be sure to leave the man a thank you in the comments down below. And with that said, please enjoy our conversation. Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I am very, very excited to be bringing what is probably the coolest video I've ever had the pleasure of bringing to the channel. I am joined by the one, the only creative director of The Division 2. How are you doing today, Yannick?
Hello, I'm doing great. I'm doing pretty good. Pretty excited.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll start by saying thank you for letting me record this, and thank you so much for being here. Not only do I super appreciate you giving your time, but I think the community is really going to appreciate listening to this and hearing some of your insights. We're going to talk about TU15, season 9, year 4, all that stuff. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's just, good to talk. I think I've said that a few times, but it's we've been silent for a while, and it's just like now I could just talk for hours and hours about all the stuff we've been working on. So, being kind of let loose and be allowed to talk as much as we want about all of that is just so exciting. It feels good. It
And
feels
there's
right.
a big difference between Twitter and actually being able to use your own words.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's that's a bit easier. I don't have to restrain myself to 280 characters.
Exactly. We need that edit button. All right. The last thing that I will say before we get fully into it is I just want to clarify for everybody listening that we are recording this prior to TU15's launch. And so that might impact some of my questions and wording because I haven't gotten to personally experience anything myself besides PTS. So just thought I would let people know that. But with that said, if you're ready, let's get into it.
Yep.
I want to start with some personal questions, just about yourself and your role at Massive. As creative director of the Division 2, is it fair to say that you are basically the head of the Division 2 development team, or how does that hierarchy kind of work internally at Massive?
The head would actually be the producer.
Okay.
So it's Adrian. Adrian Traska is actually in charge of the entire team, and I would say I come second. But basically, my role is I'm in charge of everything that goes into the game. So the producer is in charge of making sure the team functions and making sure we are delivering content, but what that content is and what's the overall strategy on how do we get new players, how do we keep our players in game, what do we do with the game. This is my responsibility.
Cool. So that makes a lot of sense. On a day-to-day basis, then, what is like your normal schedule? What do you do? I'm sure it differs from when an update's releasing versus not, but kind of what does that look like?
Mostly, I try not to be a bottleneck. That's the struggles of my day. But it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of calls. The thing with my role is that I have to work on a lot of very different timelines. So I'm working on TU15, but I'm also working on the updates after that, and I'm working on future IDs and a bunch of stuff. So it's you work on a lot of different timelines, which means you work with a lot of different subsets of the team who are all focused on one area, but I have to have a vision, a view on everything. So that means that it's, as I said, it's a lot of calls or a lot of meetings to try to feedback people on their work or give them a vision, and then feedback on their work and the way they're executing on that vision. And really, it's a role that's in the middle of everything because I said I'm pretty much looking after everything that goes into the game. But I also talk a lot with our marketing folks and communication folks and community and all of that, because I'm also one of the points of contact to keep them informed about
Right.
everything that goes into the game. So it's a role that's that is
All encompassing.
exactly. It's it touches on a lot of aspects. But yes, as I said, a day-to-day for me is it's a lot of meetings, a lot of emails, not enough playing the game
Yeah.
as much as I would like to, except when it's playing, in work in progress stuff.
Right. Which is way different.
But yeah, which is a very different thing. Yeah, that's a lot of that, and then a lot of PowerPoint presentations.
Cool. So this is something I'm very curious about. When you were brought onto the project, or like you started on the Division 1, was your title a community developer, or what was the official title?
Yeah, that's right. I was community developer when I joined the Massive and the Division.
So can you talk about like the journey from there until now? Because that's like kind of a crazy development. Like, how did that happen? Like, what stuff did you learn along the way? Anything you can share there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unusual.
Yeah.
It's I joined as a community developer. I had like 10 years experience in customer relationship. I started as customer support agent in 2007 in video games. So yeah, I had experience in community management, and I joined Massive as community developer for Division 1. That was over 7 years ago. That was 1 year before we launched Division 1. And I love working with community, and that was really a passion of mine. But initially,
Yeah.
when I started working in video games, like a lot of people who work in video games or who are passionate about video games, I wanted to make games. That was my end goal eventually.
Right.
So with Division 1, I think I had the luxury of being able to work very, very closely to the development team through sharing feedback, and we had a lot of processes in Division 1, or we set up a lot of processes on, okay, how do we try to provide feedback to the team, and how do we try to act on that feedback and make all the balancing changes and all of that. And I always try to be as proactive as I could in those conversations, and not just be the messenger in between, but try to be part of the solution as well.
Right.
So I think through that, I actually gained a lot of insights and learned a lot on the creative and design process of the game. I got very close to the team, especially design team, and our former creative director, Julian Geraghty. And then when Division 2 was on the horizon, I just I made my intentions clear that I would like to join the team, the development team, and luckily I had gained their trust, and they apparently had seen something in me, so they all trusted me, and I started with a role in the live team as live content manager. But that was my role when we started Division 2, when Division 2 came out, which was mostly focusing, while everybody was focusing on launching the game, I was already the one starting to focus on what happens after launch, what type of content are we going to start putting in the game.
Gotcha.
And yeah, from there then the team eventually moved on. Our creative director started focusing on something else, and they put me in charge.
Wow.
It's been like that since then. But yeah, I think it is an unusual path. Usually when you work in community, it's very, very common that you follow more of a marketing path.
Right.
And that just wasn't something for me. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to make games. So I'm glad I'm here today and I get to do that.
Well, I know myself and a lot of us are super glad that somebody who's been with the division for so long is now in your type of role. So I think that's awesome.
It's actually we were discussing about it with Lauren, our director, and it seems to be quite rare at Ubisoft, especially to have people or someone that has been with one IP for so long.
Yeah,
I mean, you probably have some people like on Assassin's Creed and some of the old IPs
sure.
like that, but usually people bounce between projects and between
Hmm.
IPs. So having been here, I think myself and Adrian Traska, our producer, we are the two oldest
Wow.
oldest in how long have we been with the IP
Yeah.
in the team. We've been both here since before Division One launched, and pretty much everybody else in the team joined afterwards. So I
That's
think it's
crazy.
important because it creates consistency, and it's
Yeah.
we've been through everything when you talk about legacy stuff, 1.4 Division One, the launch of Division One, or the launch
Yeah.
of Division Two, and even a bunch of things. That's we were there and we remember all of that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I guess in a similar vein to that, when you did the stream earlier this week, you spoke about your partnership with Ubisoft Bucharest, which obviously
Mm-hmm.
is a newer thing for year four. I thought that
Yeah.
that introduction video that you guys included was very nice to do. Put some faces to the name that we've been talking about. I'm curious if there are any additional studios that are supporting the Division Two right now beyond just Massive in Bucharest, and also kind of how you feel about the team that you've put together over the last year that's now behind and supporting the Division Two.
It's I'll start with the second part of that question, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
I think we have a great team, and honestly, it's when we got into this whole endeavor of rebuilding a team and restarting production from pretty much from nothing. It was very scary,
Yeah.
and we were not sure if we could do it. And trying to find a partner, trying to find the right team that would have the right people for us was not easy. Ubisoft is a big company. There's a lot
Hmm.
of studios and a lot of development folks, but there's also a lot of projects. So
Yeah.
it's not so easy necessarily to find help, especially in the scale that we were looking for.
Hmm.
As it was said in the video in the live stream, we started with a team of 35 at Bucharest. It's been big. It's got bigger since, but it's even if that doesn't sound much, it's not easy to find that kind of team.
Yeah.
You can find one person here, one person there, but finding a full functioning production team available for you is not easy. But we got it in Bucharest, and they've been super eager, and a lot of them are really super passionate about the project. And super passionate about the engine and learning the engine as well. One thing that I think they've been really fantastic at, and I mentioned that in the stream, but it's I think it's really not easy to join a project that is already aged like the Division Two. There's
Yeah.
so much legacy stuff in there that they need to learn and understand, and they're probably scratching their heads sometimes with like, why was that thing done that way? And there's probably a story behind that.
Yeah.
But what matters for them is just the end result of like, okay, they have to work with that, and they would probably have done it a different way. But it's and they've been really good at that, at adapting, at being super flexible to embrace the way things are done or have been done with the division,
That's
and
great.
uh, and to in a way to retro engineer, to deconstruct the game, to learn
Hmm.
and see how things were done, and then can I copy that and mimic that. So anyway, it's a very talented team, and they're super passionate. So we're really lucky to have them. I think we have a really good relationship. In a way, I think um, the pandemic and the lockdowns, and especially working from home,
Hmm.
actually has helped us. Paradoxally, it actually helped us get closer with them because since we all for a while actually when we were working on TU15, most of the work on TU15 was done from home.
Yeah.
And so it didn't really make a difference if the people were sitting in Bucharest or in Malmö, Sweden,
Right.
because we were all just talking to each other through a screen anyway. So I think at the end, even though we are all back at the office, we still have that dynamic where it's just everybody is just one call away, and it's very natural. And I think we have a really good cohesion in the team, even though it's different studios.
Yeah.
So I'm really confident, and it's a team that's here for the long run. It's not a team that's interested in, oh, we'll learn how to do Snowdrop and then we'll make our own game or whatever. It's
Yeah.
they want to be on the division. So so I'm really confident for the future with them.
Well, they did a great job with Countdown, so
I think, as a first exercise, it speaks for itself.
for sure.
It's not for everyone, and everybody has opinions about that mode. That's fine, but it's when you look at the mode itself and the quality of it, I think as a first exercise for a team that a year ago had no idea how to make video games in Snowdrop, I think it's pretty impressive. And yeah, for your first part, it's yes, we're working with our studios. So the bulk of the work is done by Bucharest and Massive. But we actually have a couple of our studios. We're working with Toronto as well.
Okay.
And we're working with Shanghai. But those are actually helping us on very specific tasks.
It's in those smaller capacities.
It's in smaller capacities, exactly. Yeah. Actually, with Toronto, Toronto is working on the cinematics. So you see that, we now have cutscenes in our seasons, and these have been produced.
Which the one today looked great.
Yeah, and that one is not in the game, but it's. I was just watching your video before I jumped at that discussion, and that one is not in the game. It was made just for the just as a reminder for everybody before they jump into the update. But so we have cutscenes in the season now, and so Toronto made those, and then Shanghai is helping us with all the apparels. So apparel events are produced with the team in Shanghai. So these are very specific tasks, but then everything that is game content, as in like seasons, game mode, the expertise system, the new gear, and all that was produced jointly between Bucharest and Massive.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad to have some of that clarification. I know people listening want to get to it. Let's shift over to some game questions. Why not? I kind of want to start with this. I think the vast majority of us can agree that it was great to see you all back in the live format on the stream earlier this week. Thought Daria did a great job for it being her first time in that format.
She did amazing, right?
Yeah, totally.
Big shoes to fill. It was so natural. It felt, it actually felt so natural. And I think that was hopefully that showed. But it's I was concerned before going live because I personally haven't flexed those muscles in a while, so I was like, I wasn't sure about how that would go. And yes, with Daria, I mean, it's a new relationship we're building, so so of course it's different than with Hamish, where we've been doing that for many years. But I think she did fantastic, and it at no point it felt forced or unnatural for us. It just flowed.
Well, so the question is then, because of how it went, how did it feel seeing 10,000 people in the stream after you've been away for so long?
I mean, it feels great. I mean, being live and being able to talk live, as I was saying at the beginning, is just it's been great, and it felt really good. And seeing so many people show up, I think was just mind blowing. We had no idea when we went into producing more content. We had no idea how many people would still be here by the time we would ship. And even up to recently, just before we started, doing the PTS and all of that, just before we started making the content public, we had no idea what kind of impact this would have. And, was like, will people actually answer the call? Will people still be here for us? And when you look at so far the indications we have, it seems like there's a lot of people that have been waiting. So and that are here and that are eager to come back. So it's super encouraging. And of course, as you said, we're recording this before the update goes live, and everything can happen when it goes live. We'll
find out in 12 hours.
Exactly. We'll know soon, and I'm sure there's going to be good and bad, as is usually the case. But it's been so encouraging to see, and so motivating to just see the community come together, and that life coming back, and the anticipation and the excitement, and then the conversation, even the negative that comes with it. All of that's just like it just feels good.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, let's talk Year 4 then, since it's about to kick off. As you have said before, and as you iterated on the stream, this content wasn't always planned. TU12 was going to be the final update. And so I'm curious, as you guys began working on all this stuff last year, Was it liberating in any way to kind of have like a clean slate to work with where nothing was mapped out for you? And also, were there any, guiding goals or philosophies that you were all aiming to achieve for year four, as far as, delivering stuff to the game?
Um, it's, I mean, yes and no in the liberating part. I think it's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, it was interesting because, as you said, it was a clean slate. It was okay. We need to make more content. We knew that we would have a long gap between TU12 and what has now become TU15.
Yeah.
So we knew we needed something that would be as strong as we could to bring people back. Uh, and But it's also super daunting because, as I said, until now we had no idea who would still be here and if people would
Yeah.
answer. So it's that kind of mixed feelings of like, okay, we need to do that, and then it's cool that we get to keep supporting the game. We're all super happy to get to continue. Uh, but the process of having to going through the process of rebuilding the team and going all the back and forth that took place then between what was the initial idea of content we were going to do, and then confronting that with these are the people we can get and what are these people good at, and okay, this fits, this doesn't, this needs to change.
Right.
There were a lot of iterations on the plans we had to make it fit with the team we have. So it felt good because that's part of the job, and making a video game and making a live game, it's all about compromises. It's all about just measuring capacity versus return on investment in a way.
Yeah.
And it's always, oh, I have that great idea. How much of that can we do with the team? And I have that other great idea and that other great idea, and I just have those people. So which one of those do I prioritize?
Right.
And that was a lot of that. So it feels good because, as I said, that's part of the job and that's what it means to run a live game. But it was also super daunting because until now we just were kind of operating in the dark, having no idea if people would be interested. Again, we'll see when this goes live, and I hope the numbers will speak for themselves. But at least just again, just seeing the reaction it's hopefully the confirmation that we didn't do that for nothing.
Yeah.
Or in vain.
For sure. Awesome. Well, I had a few questions about seasons. That was an aspect that I was very curious to hear about. And then obviously this week we got the intelligence annex that had some very interesting tidbits in there. We learned that you're changing your approach to story delivery a little bit,
Yep.
With stuff like condensing the open world area usage to make things more contained. You're going to have Kelso kind of be like our audio log vendor in a way. We're going to have more cinematic stuff like that. How do you see all of those things coming together to provide a more dynamic story experience, as was kind of hinted at in the article?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of our ambitions when we got into this endeavor was that one of the reasons why we're talking today, and one thing that really helped us keep supporting the game is that the season model works for the division. And I know that not everybody likes it, or people would like it to be one way or another. But what we have actually has allowed the game to to keep having activity and to keep generating enough revenue so that it makes sense to keep investing money into it. So we want to keep building on that model.
Right.
And initially, when we made seasons after the release of Warlords of New York, or while we were working on Warlords of New York, we made seasons as like, okay, that needs to be a calendar of activity. So it's a calendar of activities, and then we're just going to put a narrative wrapper around it just to give a context as to why you're doing those things. And so that was the manhunts and the initial, especially the first two seasons. It's like it's Rogue Agents, but it's almost in a way it's filler content. It's just here to give you a bit of context in the world, but that doesn't really have any impact on the narrative events, on the the big picture of the story of our game.
Yeah.
We started changing that a bit with season 3 and obviously season 4, but season 4 was supposed to be our conclusion as well. And we we knew we wanted to conclude with, we need to wrap up the failure and the President Ellis narratives. That's kind of what we were aiming for. So anyway, all of that to say that when we got into the production of year 4, we thought that, especially looking at the reaction of people to the end of season 4, which, I mean, we can all agree was not up to what Phaelor deserved as a character.
Yeah.
We just saw that people were actually much more involved into the story and the story of seasons than we had anticipated. So for us, it became very clear that we need to invest into that. We need to actually, we have that framework that exists, and we can do more with it. So we really wanted to make story a much more important part of the content we're producing. So in order to do that, one of the problems we've always had with a lot with the narrative and the way we're delivering a story in Division, actually not just in seasons, is that a lot of it is delivered through collectibles. And the problem with collectibles is that they play whenever you pick them up. And most of the time you pick them up and you're in the same time you're shooting people.
Right.
So it's always very hard to follow really the story because you're always distracted. So one simple idea or concept that we had was just, no, we need to create moments where we're asking players we're giving players quiet so they can listen to that story. And so that's why we kind of changed that framing. So we said there's always going to be the collectibles you get when you're doing your targets, but there are moments where we want you to go back to the boo and we want you to talk to Kelso the way many video games do. Go back to your quest giver, and they're going to give you exposition on what is happening. And you're doing that in a safe environment. There is no combat, there is no distraction, and you can listen to the story because the game tells you this is the moment for you to listen to the story. So that's it's simple. It's something that not revolutionary, but it's I think playing it myself on work in progress versions. It helps a lot to actually understand what is happening. Add to that cutscenes, add to that simplifying as you mentioned, simplifying the kind of checklist of activities you need to do for each lieutenant, and then streaming it or cutting it down a bit, because that's something we also realized it was just too much. I mean, it's initially the idea was like, every season is basically the equivalent of replaying the campaign. You do a season and you will have to replay everything, or all the missions in the game, or and do all the open world and everything. And it's too much to ask, because we want as much as possible. We want people to be able to enjoy the game the way they want. And when you give them a checklist that is long like that, of okay, you need to redo that mission for the X amount of time and redo that control point and redo this and redo that, it takes the fun away, because it feels like it's just it's just too much. So we wanted to focus more on the story and on the getting the target and going after the target. So we cut it down drastically. And when you start piling all of that together, what you get is something that is, of course, shorter, but that means that's fine, because then people can do it and then go do whatever they want to do with the game. But something that is actually much more dynamic and impactful in how we're delivering a story. And so that's why we feel comfortable. We can start investing more. That's why we're, making videos like the one we published today for us, but in the past for the people that will listen to this, the story recap, where we feel like we can now make the story really move forward in meaningful and impactful ways for our world, because our story delivery is going to be better and more impactful. And that's just a start. If that's something that the community reacts positively to, we already have ideas on how we can push it even further. That doesn't mean we're only going to do story. We're still going to do a bunch of other things. But as we keep refining and polishing the model, we can add more and more to it.
Awesome. Well, I think a lot of people are going to be really excited to hear that. On that note, then, the article also introduced us to the concept of mission takeovers.
Yep.
On paper, at least how it's described in there, to me, it doesn't sound that dissimilar from like the final, prime target manhunt missions that we saw in seasons 1 through 4, where, an old mission zone is repurposed to tell a new story. But the article does label this as like a new kind of content. And it says it's something that will ultimately provide more flexibility and variety for future content. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on what exactly that means and what that's going to translate to in game, and also what exactly is meant at the end when it says the system's capabilities are going to expand over time.
Yeah, it's there's a very big difference between the mission takeovers and the climax missions, as we call
Okay.
them, the ones from the prime target. Is that, and the strength of that new system we've created is that the mission takeover is basically it's uh, it's a system that allows us to just take any mission, or not any mission at the moment, but some of our missions.
Yeah.
Uh, and uh, and just say, hey, repopulate that mission with that faction and put a random boss there. It's basically, if I simplify, it's taking the bounty system and applying it to a mission.
Okay.
That's kind of what it does. So it's taking the mission space and it's going to automatically say, oh, so these are the spawn closets I have and these are the rooms I have. So I'm going to put those waves and that boss at the end.
Gotcha.
And it's the game does that itself. We just need to tell it, okay, put those people. And now, because we're doing it with the targets, we're saying the final boss is not random, it's that guy. And that's the gist of it.
Sure.
So what's really cool with that is that means it allows us to put the targets in main missions,
Yeah.
and which is, I think, more interesting than putting them in the open world as bounties.
Yeah.
But it's different from the climax mission in a sense that currently, at least, it's not like the climax mission. How they are handcrafted. We're rescripting the mission. We're
Yeah.
putting all the narrative and all the voiceovers on it and all of that. And this is not going to be pushing the mission takeovers are not going to push it as far as that. You're not going to have much narrative, for example. Because the system doesn't allow for that. And that's what we mean when we say we're going to expand on that system. It's because we want to invest more into it and bring it as much as we can closer and closer to the quality that you would get in a climax mission.
Cool.
But by still having the benefits of it being much, much less work for us to
Sure.
produce. But for season 9, it's going to be the basic version where it's basically repopulating the mission with the right faction and putting the target as the final boss. But there's not going to be the same narrative context and the same quality of handcrafting the encounters as you would have in a climax mission. Not yet.
Cool. Well, that makes
But
a lot
that's
of
our goal.
sense, and I'm interested to see how that'll play out on tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last season question. The article really kind of set up, where season 9 is headed. We've got also that cinematic this morning that kind of recaps what's happened since Warlords and kind of
Mm-hmm.
teases what's ahead. We know we're going to learn more about Faye's motivations. There's some Black Tusk hints in there, but we also then have the True Sons, which at least to me almost feel like they're coming out of left field a bit because we haven't heard from him in a
Mm-hmm.
while. But there's
Mm-hmm.
big stuff. They've got a new leader. Their operation is moving nationwide. We're also supposedly getting our first glimpse at some sort of brand new threat, is what the article said. And so I'm curious if you can provide any sort of guidance as for what to expect for this inaugural season of Year 4 with all of these different storylines converging.
It's a new chapter, and that's really what season 9 is. It's opening a lot of new threads. As you said, the True Sons have been kind of kicked out of the big picture after the main campaign, especially after you took out Ridgeway, their leader.
Yeah.
And so now they're making a comeback. They have a new leader, and they're trying to go for the capital again and try to regain their strength in Washington D.C. In the same time, you have the Black Tusk, but have always been a threat and are still a threat. But what you're going to see, and that's what the video hints at, is we're going to find out more about their actual leader, Sokolova, and and you still have the consequences of failure. And what what the hell did she do there? What happened? So all of those are kind of narrative threads that we're going to explore, and of course that are going to eventually connect at some point. But it's season 9 is really an opening. It's really you would watch your TV series, you would think that season 4 was the conclusion of an actual season of episodes, and this would be a new season. That's really the way we're looking at it. It's a whole new chapter, and of course we took out a lot of known people. We killed the president. Fedor is dead. Fedor is dead for good. He's not coming back.
Just so everybody knows.
You know,
it
he's
wasn't
dead.
Already clear.
So it's introducing new characters as well, and creating new, hopefully interesting characters that people are going to care about, and keep deepening our lore, and also connecting with other elements. We have a thriving transmedia with the division. We have books, and we have a bunch of other things. So in particular, the book that came out recently, Recruited, is connected to our canon of the game. So you're going to actually find references in our story to what happened in the book.
That's awesome. That's very awesome.
And those stories are actually connected as well. So it's also about really extending the lore and the canon, and making our world bigger.
Cool. Well, that's more than I thought I was going to get, but that's really awesome. Had a question about Countdown. I am very excited for it, and I think it's going to be a great replayable outlet for the game. It also appears to be incredibly lucrative for loot. As we saw in the PTS, nade items drop from every hunter. It's got its own currency and vendor system. And while I am super excited to have that in the game, is there ever a concern with new content like this mode or other stuff invalidating older content? Is keeping stuff like Summit or the open world or whatever else, relevant, something that the team thinks about or is, even really concerned about at this point?
Yes, I mean, the problem is, it's always about, it's always trying to find the fine line between, should people play this because it's fun, or should they play it because it's rewarding?
Right.
And you hear both when you listen to the community. You have people that are like, no, if it's rewarding, I'm going to feel forced to play it because that's the best way to get loot, but I'm not going to have fun. And you have the people that are like, I need to be rewarded for my time. And I mean, it's a very tough one. And yes, Countdown is definitely, it is very rewarding. It is probably too rewarding. The problem is that we give you a lot of named NPCs in there, and hunters count as named NPCs as well. So you get the upgraded loot that you should get from killing a boss, but you get that, like, what is it? I don't know, 12 times in a Countdown run, because for every boss of the encounter, the boss of the core objective, and each hunter, you get that. So it might be something we will need to have a look at eventually. But it's I think at the moment, we know that it's going to be the game mode that people will want to play for a while, and I think it's fine if at the moment it's going to be a bit more rewarding, and it's going to be fun and feel good for everyone. But there will be a point where, yes, we are going to need to look at our end game holistically, and look at every piece of it and see, okay, what fell off, what are the things that are just completely irrelevant today, and how do we beef that up to make sure that at the end of the day we give the choice back to all of the players so they can pick the activity they enjoy and they don't feel like they're being left behind in terms of loot progression.
Cool. Well, that's definitely a fine balance, and I think with targeted loot being different places, but I'll let you guys handle that end of stuff. I'm excited to play in the meantime. Had a question about PvP, as I am a PvP person myself. Obviously on the stream you all addressed it, which I thought was very admirable, and I appreciated hearing the honesty about that stuff. And while I think the majority of people now understand your position of where you'd like to do more, but you lack the resources and the people, I was curious as to, even if we shouldn't be expecting huge foundational changes to the DZ or conflict at this point, is it still possible that we could continue to see small quality of life or content additions? Something that comes to mind is like the contaminated events that were added to the Division 1's DZ and 1.6. Stuff like that was relatively small, but it just helped refresh things a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for bringing it up. So it gives me a chance to clarify maybe my statement, because I've seen a lot of debate online.
Yeah.
But what I meant to say is I didn't mean to say we're not going to touch PvP.
Right.
That really wasn't my intention. What I said, what I meant to say is that yes, we do not have the people to make a major PvP overhaul and completely change the dark zone, and completely change conflict, and invent a new PvP in the division. We just cannot do that. It's not just a term of size, but it's a matter of having the right people in the team. Like PvP it's a discipline. It's an expertise that requires the right people, and we don't have those. Maybe we will get them, but at the moment we don't. It's a very specific one, and there are not so many people out there in the industry.
There's a reason why Red Storm was paired.
Exactly. We used to rely on Red Storm, and of course they're not here anymore. And we never really filled that gap, which is why we haven't touched PvP for such a long time. But that doesn't mean we are not going to touch it. There are some big outliers out there in the PvP experience that we can address. The shield was one example of that, but it's we're still going to try to look at the main issues that people are super vocal about. So it's really, and I want us to try to do more of that, and be a bit more brave in trying to address those, even though we're not, we don't have the super expert experienced people behind us to test. Yeah, it's fine, you can do it. That's not going to break the game. We will experiment and we will try, but it's so yeah, all of that to say that yes, we are not going to majorly, completely change our PvP, but we are still going to try to improve what exists in the game currently, and especially fix the things that are just not working as intended. And a lot of feedback we see from the PvP community, it comes from things that are just not working the way they should, or the way you would expect them to, and that we're going to try to address. And it's just about trying to filter through all the conversation to find what are the actual pain points and how do we address those.
Yeah. Well, I know for sure you have a lot of dedicated people in the community who, even if you were to, spin up a test server and just put in some wild changes, you would get plenty of people who would be willing to go in and try it and give feedback. So totally, I think that's going to be a good plan moving forward. I kind of wanted to ask about your approach to content as a whole, specifically reworks and revamps versus new content. People always, as I'm sure you're well aware, people always want all sorts of reworks to core systems like gear or skills or mods or whatever, and as well as content stuff like Kenley College or the Summit. Then on the other hand, you also have a lot of people who always want new types of content, from new game modes to story stuff and all of that. So I'm just wondering, at the end of the day, what kind of factors go into the final decision when you say, all right, we're going to go back and revamp specializations versus saying, we're going to dedicate our resources and time into creating a new experience like Countdown or other stuff in the future? What's ultimately the deciding factors between reworking the old and creating the new?
It's always a mix of both, but it's also very different in the context of TU15 versus if we would have, still have the existing division team that made the game. Because revamping something that was made is easier if you have the people that made it in the first place, because they remember how it was made and why it was made that way. We see that with the spec revamp that we've been working on, and that's not the reason why we delayed it. By the way, it's not because the team was didn't manage to do it or whatever. But as we were doing it, we had to constantly come back to the people that are no longer on the team, that are working on other projects, and ask them, okay, why did you do that? Why, how did that actually work? And what's that line of code here? What does it mean? You constantly have to go and poke them, which of course makes the process slower. As opposed to if you would have those people on the team and would be able to do it. and also like new game mode, for example. One reason why this is what we wanted for TU15 is because in the context of creating a team, making a new game mode is the best way for that team to gain experience and to learn how to work on the game because it's safe, because the
Yeah.
game mode is an isolated experience.
Uh,
So if it's broken, it's a broken isolated experience. It's not breaking the game.
yeah.
And if they make mistakes, if we make mistakes, not them, it's part of it as well. If we make mistakes, it's isolated, it's limited to that thing. As opposed to if we would have said, let's redo the dark zone. If we would have fucked up the dark zone, we would be in a different place.
Yeah.
So that's also why we wanted to do a game mode, because and a PvE game mode at that, because it's something that touches a lot of the fundamentals of our game. It uses a lot of existing systems. It touches on the level design, the PvE, the AI, the gear game, all of that, the difficulty and everything, the matchmaking, all those systems that are part of our game, and it allowed the team to learn how all of those systems work and how do we put them together into a condensed experience. So that was also a bit of a kind of a training exercise for them to learn to make content for the game. So that's a reason why we made a game mode.
Yeah.
But in general, I think you always kind of want a bit of both novelty and revamps. And I think I think we haven't done enough revamps. I think we hopefully we will see more of them in the future.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of old things in our game that are that just exist but that don't really make sense anymore, and we see that in the even in the community. There are some questions. You talked about Candy College, or
Yeah.
like classified assignments and these kind of things that are there but like nobody uses, and then even functionalities and I know we have always conversations or feedback on the gear game and on all of that. So there's a lot of ideas and wishes are not the problem. We have
Yeah.
a ton of them. It's just always trying to pick what's the best thing, what's the best investment for the game, one update at a time. I mean, we have a plan for the year, but when we do the plan for the year, we already cut it down in updates, and we don't
Right.
get this fits here, this fits there, and also trying to take into account who do we make it for, because we know when we're making conflict, we know it's not for the PvP players. So then when can we make PvP things to try to satisfy those people? And conflict is also not for not conflict content. Sorry. Yeah. It's it's also not necessarily for solo players, even though we allow solo playing, but it's
right.
it requires quite a pretty advanced solo player to do it. So okay, then we'll also need to do content for solo players at some point. So even when we talk about novelty, it's not just novelty as one general thing. It's you always need to think of, okay, what novelty do we bring for those type of players and those type of players. So anyway, I think it is a mix, and I don't think there is a winning formula. It's just something that we try to plan in advance, and we try to satisfy everyone, and then depending on how the community actually reacts to what we produce, then it shifts, because then we realize that new voices emerge and new wishes come.
Yeah. Well, on that note, something that you mentioned in the stream was at this point, you guys have to be very calculated in your decisions about what to spend time and resources on, given the circumstances. And obviously, I think that's pretty smart. But you then also said that while you do have your own ideas and plans for your 4 content, you're open and willing to take community suggestion to inform what type of stuff you might pursue. So I have 2 questions. Firstly, for anybody listening, what is the best and most consolidated place for them to leave any ideas or feedback for content they might have? And also, what sort of timeline do you think you'd be able to attribute to any community decided features that might get acted on? Because I have to imagine that if you were to decide on stuff now, it would take a while to do, and you probably already have some of your own content planned, at least for the next few updates.
Believe it or not, the best place is always going to be the forums, because we actually have people that are just combing our forums, and all the suggestions are actually documented and tracked. internally. So it's usually, it's the best way if you want that suggestion to reach the team. If you want that suggestion to be a community conversation, forums are maybe not the best way because not everybody goes on the forums. So I would say, maybe the subreddit is a good place. Or I don't want to say you can reach out to me on Twitter because I mean, not just because of the spam, but because I love those suggestions, but it's more also because the risk with all that information coming to me directly is that it creates a bias of like, oh, everything I see on Twitter is the truth. And that shouldn't be the case because there's a whole community out there of people that don't talk to me on Twitter. So
Sure.
So I'm trying not to get too influenced by just that echo chamber that I look at, because that's where I'm the most active.
Yeah.
So I think it's the best way for us to see if ideas are relevant is if people can rally others behind it, and then when we see that, we're like, okay, that's something that's popular and that's something we should really consider. So that's why I'm suggesting the subreddit, for example, because that's where we would quickly see how much activity it generates, and of course, for the content creators out there, of course, making content about it is also a good way. But yes, we have plans, and when we make our plans, we try to anticipate what is it that people want. We are not working in a bubble. We are not, contrary to what some people think, it's not as if we are dictating, or this is the way you should play, and we don't care about the way you want to play. We always try to create our updates and our content plans with looking at what the players want and expecting or anticipating what will they want a month from now. But that can always shift, and when we see a demand that becomes strong, then we change our plans to actually adapt it. And the timeline on that really varies on how big something is. If you want to bring back a suggestion on you should change that skill in that direction because it would be better, and we agree with it, that's something that can happen as fast as the next title update. But if the suggestion is, hey, you should do that game mode, even if we look at it and like, you know what, that's a great idea, we hadn't thought of that and we will do it, then we're talking about a much longer time frame. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is TU15. So sure, they've been, people have been waiting for a year and a half for content. But TU15, the work on TU15 did not start immediately. When we announced, we're going to keep doing content. When we
said you didn't get Bucharest until like April 1st, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Bucharest started working in April, and started working, that means they started onboarding, as in learning Snowdrop and learning the division. So the work on the title update itself started later than that. So you're looking at less than a year for title update 15. That's actually normal. That's not longer than any other title update we've had there.
Really?
That's when I said at the beginning, I'm working on parallel on a bunch of different tracks. I can tell you already that the work on not just the next title update, but the one after that, it already started. It already started some time ago. So considering 9 months to a year for something as big as countdown and even expertise, that's normal. That's not really longer than usual. So it's not as if title update 15, like people who say, but they had a year and a half, they should have made something as big as Warlords of New York. A lot of people don't realize how long it actually takes to make content. But taking 9 months or a year to make a package as title update 15, that's not out of the ordinary.
And you weren't able to start it when there was already content coming out. It was when there was already stopped. So
exactly. That's what created that delay, is that usually you work on all of that in parallel, so people don't see that. But actually, when we release a TU, you can already be sure that there's probably 2 more TUs that are already underway. So here the prime is just we stopped everything and we had to start from scratch, and in the process, of course, like train a new team, and so add all the delay of onboarding and training. So that's why it took that long, and that's why it created that gap, because we had nothing in between. But again, usually that's the kind of timeline we're working with. We're always looking at, that's why we work as a year, because we need to know what we're going to do in the last title update of the year, because we need to start working on it today.
Wow. Well, that's pretty crazy to hear about that, because that's exactly the type of stuff that we don't hear about, or have that inside perspective on. Okay, well, that concludes the game focused ones I have, and as we wrap towards the end here, I had a few rapid fires that I want to send your way that hopefully won't be as in depth. This first one is inspired by our good friend in the community, Sergeant Graybeard, who nobody listening would know this, but was going to be a part of this conversation, but unfortunately couldn't due to other reasons. So from both of us, what is your absolute favorite build you ever made in the Division 1 or 2?
I think I'm going to be boring, but I think Striker Division 1 was
that's a classic.
Was just a classic, and it was just a lot of fun. And it was just, it was comfy because it was safe, because it did everything. And that's probably the reason why everybody liked it, and was probably OP, because it was, damage and tanking at the same time. But yes, it was. That was fun.
No shame. That's a good answer.
But I'm running Hunter's Fury for a while now, Division 2, and that's also a lot of fun.
I mean, Hunter's Faith too was nice. Do you have a favorite enemy faction from either game?
Favorite enemy faction. I need to think about that. It doesn't come immediately.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think mine have to be the Cleaners, just because they're so iconic,
I was going to say, I don't think it's the Cleaners.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I like the Cleaners, but I think one faction that I find fascinating is actually the Outcasts.
Because their backstory.
Because of the backstory, I think they're probably the most interesting faction, because they're really those who are like, they're horrible, they're monsters, but you actually kind of get it.
Yeah.
When you scratch a bit the backstory, and I think that's the Cleaners also, in a way, in the sense that the intentions are not necessarily wrong. It's the way they're doing it, but it's just wrong. But they're just trying to eradicate the virus. It's just they're burning everybody alive to do that. But the Outcast, I think, when you play. When you play all the missions of the Outcast, and especially when you finally take down their leader,
that echo at the end is
just like, it is tough. It is so tough, especially when you've been through all the story of them, and then just understanding her, and like all of those people put on Roosevelt Island, and like being left there, and all that, and it's just again, I think that's what I think makes them interesting, because it feels like the division is a lot about this could be me. I could be a division agent. That's the whole point of the division. It's like, you're not a superhero, you're you, and you're just a division agent because you make the choices, or the choice of being selfless and going out there to help people. But when you think of the Outcasts, it's like, maybe that could be me too, if I would have been in that context.
That's a good answer. Any chance we could ever see more gear sets from the Division 1 return, like Striker did in TU8? I know I personally would like to see Final Measure for PvP purposes.
Okay, I was going to ask, which one do you want to see?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not impossible. It's not off the table. I think there are some cool ones that we could bring back, and we've seen with Striker, but it was something popular, and of course with Striker again, it made sense because it's such a popular gear set. But I would lie if I would tell you that I haven't gone back into Division 1 to look at the gear sets and try to find some inspiration there. So yes, that's
cool.
That's a possibility.
Love it. In the stream, we heard about the fact that backpack cosmetic skins are coming in TU15, which seems pretty
Yeah.
cool. Any chance we ever see that expanded to other gear slots in the future, like chess pieces or whatever else?
That's the ambition. Yes,
Cool.
we're starting with backpacks, but it's the idea is that that functionality should expand to every gear slot.
That'll be awesome. Are there any types of build play styles that are in the game currently do you think are underrepresented and could be made more viable through further balancing or new gear in the future?
I think I don't know if like I think when you think of RPG, I think the two fantasies that I miss is I, I think we miss a proper healer fantasy in Division 2. There are healer builds and there are support builds, but I don't feel like we necessarily have that. And it's also because the content doesn't always allow for that, especially or except maybe in raids. But it's
Yeah.
to have that role of like, okay, I'm the healer, I'm keeping everybody alive. I
Future
think we could
Initiative
have.
comes kind of close.
Yeah,
But yeah.
there are some things that come close, but I feel like that was stronger in Division 1 as a fantasy.
Mhm.
And so that's one thing. And another thing, and that's due to the mechanics of our game, but like you can have, you know, tanking builds in a way of you can have armor builds or whatever. And but we don't really have, since our aggro mechanics are not as pushed as they could be. That's something in my wildest dreams I would like
Yeah.
that to get better, so you could have a proper tank in a sense of aggro and taunt
Yeah.
way, in a really more MMORPG sense of the world. That's something that I would like to see.
Cool. The Division universe has a lot of exciting stuff coming up, from the game world. We got Heartland and mobile to the latest novel coming out later this year. Eventually, we got a Netflix movie. As a fan yourself, and besides from upcoming Division 2 content, what are you most excited for?
Mm, uh, Am I allowed to say I'm just most excited for like the content coming on Division 2, or does that sound
I
does not
suppose you can.
does
I
that not
suppose you
sound
can.
honest? Because that's the truth. But it's
Yeah.
outside of that, if we take the
Or you could
game
say,
out
are you
of.
excited for the general, wealth of content that's coming to the division overall?
I mean, absolutely. I think it's amazing to see how much support that IP is getting, and I think we see how much it resonates with people.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I really love, and I hope we're going to get more of, was the audio drama Hearts on Fire.
That was really good. Yeah.
It was so good. It really surprised me in how good it was. So I actually don't know if there are plans to do more of that, but I hope there is,
Yeah.
because I think that was really outstanding, and I think that was the first time we got to really see the activation of an agent, and the way this played out in this drama was just fantastic. So I hope we get to do more of that. But I read the new book that came out, and it's a really good book, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to the sequel. Of course, the movie is out there, and I hope that's something I get to see someday. And do not ask me; I am not involved in that movie, so I have no idea what's going on. So I really cannot say anything about it.
Yeah.
But as a fan, I hope we get to see it. And yeah, I mean, all of it.
Fair enough. Final question for you, Yannick. After all this time, I don't think that I would be doing my job correctly if I didn't ask you. We know that year 4 has many more updates and more content to come. Is there anything you can tease for what we can expect beyond TU15?
I mean, I said story is important, so I
Yeah.
expect that the story is just going to keep growing. And as I said, approach season 9 as a start. And I think, you know what, season 9 I think is going to be our best season story wise. But
Okay.
I think season 11 will be even better than that. So
Who cares about 10? We're skipping
10
right
is
over
going to be
that.
good. 10 is going to be good on the season 9 level, but I think season 11
Okay.
is going to be, yeah.
I'll take it.
Going to
Looking
be even
forward to
better.
it. I will keep it to your word on that.
But
That is,
I just, if I can
yeah.
add to that though, because we talked a lot about story, and I know that there are people who are not interested in that. So I just want to clarify, even though
Sure.
I'm excited about it, that's not all we are doing. We're not just doing seasons and story. And there's some other things we're working on that, as a fan of the game, I'm also super excited with. So
Nice.
I will leave it at that. But it's yeah. I think it's going to be a cool year, and I just really hope we get to continue after that, because as I said, ideas and ambitions are not the problem. We have plenty of those.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm very excited for the specialization rework specifically, so I'm sure there's a lot more cool stuff in store. Yannick, that is all of the questions I have for you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I super enjoyed it, and I can imagine that a lot of people listening learned a lot of cool stuff. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me and for giving the opportunity. It's, as I say, it's just easier to talk, and it's hard to, especially giving a bit more insights on the reasoning behind and all that. It's hard to do those those explanations publicly out of nowhere. So it's great to have that medium and that platform to be able to give a bit of insights, because most of the time, when we are appearing silent or not transparent, is because we don't have the proper opportunity to explain.
Right.
And sometimes we can't, but sometimes we can. But it's just, as I said, it's like, I'm not going to, out of nowhere, for a tweet out there to explain the reality behind the teams and all those kind of things. So it's great to have those conversations and those opportunities where we get to talk about a bit more than just the new content.
Absolutely. Well, anytime you want to come back, you let me know. We have less than 12 hours until the servers go down for maintenance to deploy 2.15. Is there anything that you want to tell the people as they head into year 4?
I mean, just enjoy it, and it's a restart. It's probably not going to be perfect, but really approach that as this is a first step. And with the beauty with a live game is that nothing is set in stone, nothing is fixed. Everything can move, everything can be improved, everything can be changed. So that's really the way I want to hear the feedback and the conversations, and is how do we make it better from there. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. It's just hopefully people are having fun, but then out of that also already getting either confirmation or information on the other things we're working on, if that's actually aligning with where the community wants the game to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Yannick. I hope that everyone listening enjoyed and got some useful out of that. Thank you all for watching and listening, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.